Okay, well, I'm Bethany, and this is Sarah, and I teach kindergarten, and my degree, my certification is actually for birth through third grade. It's early childhood ed. So I actually went to school for like babies and up. So we just think it's really important for everybody to understand kind of developmentally, like where our kids' brains are at, so that you can teach them and have fun with them more effectively. So we're going to kind of talk about kids' developmental stages, and then I'll kind of talk about the little ones, and Sarah will talk about the older ones. So 0 to 2-year-olds. Their developmental stages, obviously a lot happens from 0 to 2, rolling over, crawling, walking, laughing, topping, learning to grip, learning to let go. Funny, I just think this is weird. Kids obviously can grip really, really, really early in life, but they don't learn how to let go till they're like 9 months to a year. So like if they're, got you latched on and you're saying, let go, it might not be that they don't want to. They might not be able to yet. But anyway, 1-year-olds, a lot of the time we know experience separation anxiety, and so that's when we have the tears. And at vKids, we try to kind of just calm them down as best we can. We give them about 10 minutes, and if they don't calm down or if they're just absolutely hysterical, we'll send for mom or dad. And a lot of the times the parents will come get them. Around 1, they begin to babble and form words, and they recognize their own name, and they'll turn their head so that you can see that they're recognizing their name. 1 to 2-year-olds can understand vocabulary more than you think. So, like, a really good example of this is babies can do, like, baby sign way before they can talk. And it's a more involved process to, like, hear words, understand them, learn what they mean, learn how to use them in context, and then learn how to make your mouth make those sounds to make that word, to use it in context. And it's a lot easier to do this. So, but don't think that just because they can't say, I'm hungry, or I don't like that, or this is what I want, that they don't understand that. So you can tell them, even at such a young age as, like for Marini, for example, because I hang out with the Meshes a lot. She's 11 months, and the other day she had my earring. And she was, like, pulling on it. And I had her by the hand. I was like, Marini, let go. And she's just laughing at me. Like, at that point, she can let go. And she just doesn't want to. And it's like, Marini. And so you have to put that stern face on because that is an act of disobedience. But so she can understand, even though she's not going to tell me let go, she understands what I'm saying when I say let go. So going into how they understand God, the little bitties just kind of view adults like the same way they view God. We're concrete, and they can see us and touch us. And so we represent God to them. We give them love, acceptance, and safety, and that's what we want them to perceive from us, so that's what they perceive about God. At the beginning, God is a source of comfort, kind of like a security blanket. And then later, God is thought of as a real person who lives in heaven or at church. I had this student, this is a little older, she wasn't 2 years old, but she said this year around Christmas time, she was like, and Mary said to Jesus, look, it's Santa Claus. And I just thought, like, that's kind of where they put them all, like they're all people and they're real, but, and they're like important people. But they don't really get that, like, God isn't a human. So the way that we share the gospel with the little bitties, it's really hard to kind of wrap our minds around that because they are so itty-bitty and they so don't communicate the way that we know how to communicate. But obviously we just love them, give them acceptance and safety because they need that as an example of how God loves them and keeps them safe. And then, of course, you can make references to God whenever possible when you're talking to them, when you're trying to soothe them. If you're, you can sing little worship songs to them while you're trying to calm them down, and just kind of plug God's name wherever you can, so that they're getting that early, like, oh, God, this new word, God. So, like we said, they understand a lot more than you probably think, than we give them credit for. So don't be afraid to just really talk to them, because that's how they develop language too, is they hear and then they talk. So don't be afraid to tell them about Jesus, even if you think they might not understand. Okay, so then I'm going to move on into the 3 to 5 year olds, which they're a little bit more tricksy. So between 3 and 5 years of age, children continue to grow rapidly and begin to develop motor skills. Large motor skills would be like throwing a big ball or jumping jacks. And then fine motor skills is like writing their name or doing scissors and glue, like we do in our crafts. They also begin to understand right versus wrong, which is important for us as leaders and teachers. And they start really grasping the concept of what is fair. And we all know that life is not fair, but we want to try and help them perceive that God is fair by helping at least our vKids classroom be a fair place. So, they can learn how to share, they can learn how to take turns. And they can help the classroom be a fair place. 3 and 4 year olds are less verbal, but they understand. This is a big fancy word called receptive language, meaning they understand 3 times more than the vocabulary they use. And then 5 year olds are becoming even more articulate and can use pictures to tell a story. And I even read last year, 5 year olds, like kindergarten age, learn 8 new vocabulary words a day. And that's slowing down. So imagine how many they're learning when they're 3 and 4. They're picking up more and more every single day. So 3 to 5 year olds, how they understand God. They still are very concrete in their thinking, and God is powerful, mysterious, and potentially even frightening. They have lots and lots of questions about God and the church. Why is a favorite question. That it's that annoying stage where why? So these questions are the first steps towards them making their faith personal. And even though we get really annoyed with it, just try your best to be sincere and really think about and answer their questions as best you can. Like a couple of weeks ago, Bray and I kind of butt heads a lot, but we've been learning that the Bible is better than gold. And the first day we learned this, he was just like, how is the Bible better than gold? And I had to kind of stop the lesson and be like, okay, the Bible is more important, even though it's not money. You can't buy anything with it, but it's straight from God. It teaches us everything we know, And admittedly, I probably didn't take as much time as I should have with him to sit and talk with him. But, yeah, it's important to just try and answer those questions, however interrupting or unexciting they may be to us as adults. And then how to share the gospel with them for 3 to 5 year olds. Just make it a safe environment to ask questions. So you never want to be like, that was a terrible question, and they'll be terrified and never want to come back. So, and then celebrate when they remember what they've learned, and a lot of times, like we were talking about, kids who are repeaters, they stay both services. A lot of the times the second service, I'll ask them to kind of come up and help because, they're getting bored. But maybe they can probably remember stuff from an hour and a half ago, and then they can be your helper. And then you're thanking them and giving them praise. They're feeling special because they're being the helper and they're remembering the lesson twice. Yeah.
Memory verse over a whole month stays the same.
Right.
So if they can remember the memory verse, they can remember what we learned last week, then that's awesome.
Right. Make sure you, really hype it up, because that's a pretty big deal for a little one. in sharing the gospel, we also like to use movement to teach. It's really important to get them moving. I read an article last week that was like talking about how students are just getting more and more bored with school because they need movement, even up to like second, third, fourth, older grade levels. They need movement, and in school we just expect them to sit in their desks and be still all day. And they're actually, aside from being bored, they're not learning anything because they need that movement to get their blood pumping and their brain working better. So we incorporate movement through our games and through our Bible verses and through our vKids love. And it's important to keep them moving. It makes it more fun for us too and for them. And then we can use costumes and props or pictures to help them see the Bible stories, or acting like we put on the board. Anything to kind of help them see and experience the Bible verse instead of just like sitting there and listening, even though a lot of the time they probably can do that. It's just a lot more fun, and it gets through to them, and they retain it a lot better if you can incorporate some fun into the Bible story too. So I'm going to hand the mic off to Sarah. You want to switch so you can click? Or you want me to click? It doesn't matter.
All right. Like Josh said, I am Sarah, and I actually teach fourth grade, so that's why we kind of split up our notes the way that we did, just because Bethany teaches kindergarten. I don't know if we said that. So she handles the little ones on a week-to-week basis, and then I'm with the older elementary. So when it comes to lower elementary, first through third grade, just when it comes to their developmental stage, these children are very physically active. And those of you that have been with our school-age kids, you know this, and you know how tiny that little room is. So that's why it is important, and I think that all the things we put on the board, and even like Bethany was saying with the younger, that we retain that and we keep that up when they're older. They're not going to sit still, and we don't want them to sit still the whole time. We want to get them up and moving around because developmentally they need to be active. They are going to be active whether we want them to or not. I think it is also good to point out that they are developing a longer attention span. And a good rule of thumb, I always thought this was handy to keep in mind, is that a child can pay attention for as many minutes as they are old. So, for example, if a child is 5 years old, they can pay attention for about 5 minutes. If a child is 9 years old, they can pay attention for about 9 minutes. And so that can kind of give you a reference point when it comes to teaching the Bible lesson or doing some sort of activity, that if these children are younger, the clock is ticking. You're not going to have as much time with them. So I think that's a good rule of thumb. Another thing a good thing to know is that at this age they are beginning to enjoy group games. They can interact, they can play with each other, they can cooperate a little bit more. It's funny being in the toddler room trying to do some of these games where it's a group game. We've done relays before. Relays just don't, 3 and 4-year-olds have no idea what we're trying to do. So you're like, pass it off to the next person, and they're going around again, and as many times as they want to. So once they get to be a little older and they understand how group dynamics work, they can you can start to play some more group games with them. And they also respond well to praise. So like we said before, when they memorize their verse or when they remember something from the week before, it's great to praise them. When you see them doing something well or following the rules, giving them that positive reinforcement is good. But also keep in mind that they are more likely to sulk or to be withdrawn when they face difficulties. So especially those lower elementary school kids, first and second grade, when they are upset or they're tired, they will probably revert back to their toddler ways. And that's when you'll have them crying or throwing a tantrum or something like that. And so I think it's just good to keep that in mind, that we need to keep them active, not expect them to pay attention for too long, and then also just to try to give them that positive reinforcement. When it comes to their understanding of God, once again, they're still concrete, so God has very human characteristics. And this is the point in their lives where the example that hopefully their parents set and that vKids leaders set for them is so important because they relate that back to the way that they see God. And so that's why it's good that we keep our cool with them and that we're patient and that we're loving and that we're kind and that we display the fruits of the Spirit, because that's the way that they're going to see God at this point in their lives. Also, their faith is more action-based, and you can even see that in our curriculum, but a lot of the times the way that a lower elementary school child lives out their faith is by coming to church, reading the Bible, praying. You love your neighbor as yourself. You're kind. You share. Those are the ways that you live out your Christian faith, whether it be at church or at home. And that's good. That's what we want them to be doing at that stage. Kind of following the rules, if you will, would almost be the best way to live out their faith. I think it's really important at this stage to emphasize those things, not because we want their faith to be action-based, but because that develops good habits that they can continue the rest of their lives. And I know for me personally, I grew up in church, and I just think back to all those things I heard every single Sunday, even though they were repetitive and they seem boring at some times. Those are the habits that you want to continue. You want them to read their Bible and to pray and to invite friends to come to church, even as adults. So it's really important at that age. And when it comes to sharing the gospel with them, I think it's important to keep in mind that because their faith is very action-based, we need to honor their concerns for people or humans or creation. So for example, their prayer request might be for their sick dog at home, or I know I had one child pray for like a bug that they had seen splattered on the pavement or something like that. And that's okay because they're caring for others and they're praying. So just like I said, keep that in mind. And I think it's also when it comes to sharing the gospel with them, a great way that they can make their faith their own is by actually what we were talking about earlier, by role playing and by acting out Bible stories that they read, but then also how they can act out those Christian virtues in their life. So giving them a scenario. So your friend takes your toy and that really upsets you. What could you say to your friend? Can you guys act that out? Let's act out how we would respond in that situation. And that way, when they leave church, hopefully when they go home, they can remember that and actually do that in their lives outside of church too. And also, lastly, engaging them in non-competitive activities. So we don't want them to see church as a place where it's all about competition. I think they get enough of that in their lives outside of church through different avenues. And so I think that it's good to try to keep any competition you have as a group. So one of the examples might be learning all the books of the Bible, and you're trying to do it as a group. So you're cheering when more and more people learn because your goal is for the whole group to learn all the books of the Bible, as opposed to singling out certain kids because they're probably facing those same situations at school or on the sports team or wherever. And so we just want vKids to be a really encouraging place where kids want to come. Oh no, what did I do? All right. See if I can get back here. Hey, all right. Moving on to upper elementary, 4th and 5th grade, going through kind of the same things. If I can get my page to flip here. In 4th and 5th grade, these children are becoming more and more independent, and they can also be more cooperative with others, but that can also lead to them being more critical of others. So like I said, as a 4th grade teacher, I hear all the time, so-and-so is not working well with their group, tattling on somebody else, how they're not doing well. So I think it's important to use their desire to be with their friends and socialize and work with their friends in a positive way. And like we said, try to keep it in a positive light. And we're not going to tattle on each other in vKids. They are also developmentally outside peer relationships are becoming more and more important to them. So yes, mom and dad and brother and sister are still important, but they're also starting to develop that sense of what of peer pressure and what society thinks of them. Also, they can have quick and extreme emotional shifts, and they can be worried by mistakes and school failures. So that might be the reason why when you ask a question to the group, you hear crickets, because they are to that point where they're embarrassed to give the wrong answer in front of their friends. And so I think that's another reason why it's so important to have an encouraging environment at vKids, to where they're not embarrassed to say any answer while they're there, or to ask any sorts of questions. When it comes to their understanding of God, they're getting old enough to where they can kind of see two aspects of God. They can see God as the infinite creator of the world, but they can also see him in a more intimate way as their friend, and as someone who they can trust in and relate to like a friend. And I think that is a huge step in moving towards making their faith more personal, when they can see God in that sort of way. And it also allows them, or they're moving more towards taking responsibility for their own faith. And it's becoming less and less of just something at Sunday school or just something mom and dad do, but it can be something that they can really take on for themselves. And I think that's why it's so important, like I said before, just to encourage them to develop those habits and to be practicing those in their lives, and that's a way to show that they're making their faith their own. When it comes to sharing the gospel with 4th and 5th graders, this is a great time to introduce them to Bible history and to kind of give them more of a chronological sense of the Bible, because up until that point, we've probably just been kind of throwing stories at them. So they might go from Jonah and the whale one day to Jesus dying on the cross, back to the creation story. And so trying to give them kind of that sense of the Bible and kind of digging in deeper to the Bible. And also you can help them start to develop Bible study skills. So I know now I work with the toddlers, but when Josh and I were working with the older kids, we would try to give a prize or a piece of candy if kids brought their own Bible to church. And then when we did the Bible lesson, we would try to have them open up to the passage in their own Bible. With the toddlers, I'm just going to show them the Bible, or show them where it is in the Bible. But with the older kids, showing them, it seems simple, but things like using the table of contents to find a book in the Bible and then turning to it, and the larger number is the chapter and the smaller number is the verse. Things like that, helping them get to know their way around the Bible. And so often nowadays, our Bibles are on our phones, or they're some sort of digital way that they can look them up. And if kids can do that, then that's wonderful. But I think that it's important that it's not, when we have our phones out, we could be reading the Bible or we could be looking at Facebook. The kids don't know. And so I think it's really important for them to have the hard copy of the Bible in their hands, and knowing the books and where to find stories and what it truly says in the Bible, and not just knowing the little Sunday Bible school stories that they've been taught. Once again, like I said before, just giving them freedom to investigate their faith and to ask questions, just an encouraging environment where there are no dumb questions, there are no silly questions when it comes to the Bible or how the Bible applies to your life. And then lastly, just encourage them to make connections between Bible stories and their own real life. And like we said, they're starting to face those outside forces, if you will, the pressure at school and the pressures of sports and family and that sort of thing. And so really just helping them see how they can take what they read in the Bible and apply it to their own lives.
So we're going to move into learning styles. And actually, this is the easy version we kind of use with kids. There's actually a theory called Gardner's multiple intelligences, where there's 9 different learning styles, which I love. I did a research paper and all that because I'm nerdy. But we're just going to go over these 3. I won't make you do all 9 tonight. But it's important because you can click it, I think. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah. So the 3 main ways that the kids learn and that we try to teach are visual learners, meaning they see it, auditory learners, so they hear it, and then kinesthetic is actually doing and moving. okay?
Not just kids, everybody learns.
Right. So young children learn all three ways, and so we need to try and hit all three ways when we're teaching, because that way it'll get into their heads and stick a lot better. So they also, like Sarah was talking about attention spans, they also need to get moving every few minutes. So you think the thinking we have is up, down, right? So like getting up and doing something and then kind of sitting down and chilling out. And then getting up and doing something and then doing something a little bit quieter and calmer. Instead of, you don't want to string together like Bible verse without motions, followed by Bible story just listening, followed by, like, that's way too long for all of them to be sitting in one place, So, and if you look at our like weekly schedule with the little ones, which is in your green, in fact, it's better in your green packet than it is on our schedule, but you can look and see like the first thing, the first activity is kind of an action activity, and then you kind of sit down and do something quiet. Let's see. Yeah. So like check-in and playtime would be an up activity. And then when you do what do vKids love, that would be kind of a calmer, quieter activity. Then introductory activity, which is normally like a game, so that would be an up activity. And then your Bible lesson and prayer, that's a down, quiet time, Snack can be kind of either or. And then more activities to get them up and moving around, and then memory verse with motions. So, just try and keep it back and forth, and that way they're not getting bored sitting in one place.
Jumping in. And especially with the curriculum, we kind of pick and choose which games or which activities we do, and so just trying to kind of keep that in mind and know that you don't even have to follow the order that they give them to you necessarily, but just try to think, if I did, first we need them up, get out the way it goes, get them moving around, and then down for Bible story, and then so you can kind of keep that in mind, think, okay, if this was more of a down activity, then I need to follow it with up, and just keep going back and forth.
And you'll notice, anyone who's been in the room once will notice, like, okay, they're losing it. We have to get up and do something. And so, and a lot of the time I will get them doing an up activity or just playtime at the end of the, like, near dismissal time, just because I want them to be engaged doing something when the parents come to pick them up, because you don't want them like roaming around looking bored, and you don't want them running around getting in trouble when the parents are here. So that's why, if you've ever been in a room with me, I probably did a tootie-ta, which is like one of the old favorites, and they just like thumbs up and make a fool of themselves. It's fun. But yeah, so anytime you see that they're getting bored, just throw in something to, like, all right, let's stretch it out and get them moving. And then next is...
All right. And we're about to wrap it up, but before we do, we just wanted to kind of go over some different reinforcement techniques, because there will be times where not every child is following the directions or doing what you would like them to do or being fully engaged. So lastly, these are just a few ways to kind of help manage vKids and all the children while you're in there. But the first technique would just be to make sure that all the children are engaged, and that will help reduce misbehavior and different interruptions that you have. So I think it's also important that all of the leaders are engaged too, and this is something that I struggle with, because sometimes I'm running around trying to get something ready and we're all doing everything, but I think if all the leaders are engaged, that will set an example that we're all focused on this activity, or we're all focused on the Bible time. And then also making sure that all of the kids are engaged as well, because if you're sitting there listening to the Bible story, but your friend gets to be over there playing with Legos, well, developmentally, that's not fair to you, so you're probably going to let your teacher know that. And then you're also going to wish you were over there playing with the Legos. So just trying to make sure that all of the kids are involved, whether it be an activity, you're coloring a worksheet, you're doing the Bible lesson, whatever it is. And I think that will help when they don't have their friend there to distract them. When they know that everybody's engaged, then it will encourage more children to be engaged. The next thing is to try to use positive language rather than negative language to redirect. And this is something, even I'm a teacher and I do vKids, and today, because I knew I was giving this lesson, it's like in my mind, so I'm really trying hard to do it. And today was another reminder that that can be very difficult to do. But an example of that might be if a child is running around the room, instead of saying, "Johnny, don't run around the room," change it to, "Johnny, please walk." Or, "Johnny, remember in vKids, we walk. We don't run." And so trying to state it in a positive light instead of in a negative light, so that that child doesn't feel like it's just, "No, don't do this, don't do that, no," all the time. So trying to remind them of the rules in a positive way. I think also, if a child continues to disobey or not follow instructions, follow through on what you said, because children pick up on whether or not you mean what you say. So if you tell them, "Please walk in the room," and they run again, then that's the time where you need to go to them personally and take them aside and talk to them, as opposed to just letting them continue to run around. And then lastly, well, kind of like I was saying, have a one-on-one interaction with that child as opposed to just calling them out. Try to get with them, play with them, interact with them, or potentially even distract them from whatever it was that they were doing that was not the correct behavior. And then lastly, rather than just correcting the behavior, try to get to the heart of the matter. And that's what I think will be so great about the What Do vKids Love, because if you're hitting your friend, what do vKids love? vKids love each other. And so all of a sudden, that's a quick reminder, reinforcement. We love each other. Is hitting loving your friend? Is hitting loving your neighbor? No. And also, you could even go deeper than that into, what does the Bible say? You know, the Bible says treat others the way you want to be treated. Is that the way that you would want to be treated? So trying to go more to the heart of the matter and less of just controlling behaviors and putting out fire all throughout the time that you're with them. So that about wraps it up. I know we've bombarded you with information. You now have an honorary elementary ed degree.